What is the best kept secret of PVR? Let's bring it out.
We bring the glamour, we bring the charm. I fought for equality in housekeeping with other departments. I joined PVR in the year 2014 and we were roughly 100 plus screens at that time. We have 1700 plus screens. So it's an inventory of, let's say, roughly, if I was to just round off a number, to say 4.5 to 5 lakhs seats every day are on sale. And that's me and my team managing them. The movie is the king, then cinema is the kingdom.
Is it true that the uniforms of your staff are designed by a fashion designer?
We have worked with Ravi Bajaj, we have worked with Payal Jain, we have worked with Lekone Hemant, we have worked with Manish Malhotra also.
One celebrity guest who made your team panic?
So we get excited when Shah Rukh Khan came, Amitabh Bachchan.
You've been a big flag bearer of Posh. What about the safety of men? Has Posh ever been misused?
Wow, I could write a book about it.
From folding linen as a trainee to now heading facilities for more than 362 cinemas pan-India, she is the woman behind the very places where you drop your popcorn, where you dirty the seats, and still expect a spotless experience every single time. Today at the corner office, we sit down with Asha Patania, Senior Vice President at PVR Inox, who manages thousands of employees across more than 100 cities to make sure your cinema experience is not just clean, but seamless. We talk about running a behemoth like this, the PVR Inox merger, prevention of sexual harassment, sustainability, and what still needs to change for women at the top. Oh, and she spills a few secrets too in the rapid fire round. So stick around till the end of the episode. Right now, let's get into it. Hi Asha, how are you?
Good morning, I'm good, Ruchit. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us at the corner office and welcome. This episode particularly I'm extremely excited about because this is the first woman on the podcast.
Thank you.
And we really want to maintain ultimate equality in terms of hosting men as well as women. We'll talk more about it in the podcast, but extremely happy to host you and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Ruchit.
So you've been in this industry for more than 3 decades now, and can you please take us through your journey? How did you enter into the world of facilities and hospitality? What was your journey like, and when did you feel that, okay, this is my path?
So, Ruchit, you yourself said that it's been 3 decades and counting. So, when I first started in 93, after my college graduation from hotel management, facility was not the path that I had in mind. It was hospitality, and I was with hotels for good 18 years before I did switch gears and I moved outside the hotels. So this was a very new industry when I started. People would equate FM to more about engineering and all. The soft services were not the focus, and people like us were very far and few, especially women in this industry. And it took me some time to understand, and I applied all my hospitality experience. And today I do feel that there are many more women who are joining and switching from hospitality to FM. People are very keen to join FM now as a career path. And it has become lucrative. It is something that people look forward to. And I think there's a lot that we need to still work and do. People like us who've been now in the industry for over 10 years. We understand the industry. We know where it is today and where it can be tomorrow. So I think it's been a huge, it's a great journey so far. I'm enjoying every day and every bit of it.
Right, right. So you started out at Taj back in 1993.
Yes.
So since then to now heading PVR across hundreds of cities, across so many locations, take us through how was your journey, what were the roadblocks and how did you evolve?
So there have been many brands that I worked with. I actually interned with Oberoi's. So in my college, so there was an Oberoi influence, then there was a Taj influence, then I worked with a brand which people by campus would not have joined, but I think I contributed a lot. So that was another brand that I started working. And I finished it off with Lemon Tree Hotels. After that, I moved out of the hotels and I stepped into a real estate firm. That was due to personal reasons. And within hotels, I must mention that after 8 years, I switched gears from front office. I moved to a back of the house department that we call housekeeping. And when you say the challenge, the game changer happened there, because front of the house, people see you with a very different way. People do feel that you are somebody that deserves their respect, and you can tell people what to do, how to do in wherever you're working. The moment I shifted my gears for personal reasons, I went into housekeeping, which is heart of the house. However, people's attitude towards me changed. So when you talk about challenges, not so much about my gender at that time, but which department I was representing, that became an issue. Same people, same set of people that you would find in hotels would be very, very respectful towards people from front office, will not show the same respect. I was the same person, same experience. And I just felt that everybody could tell me how to do my job. And that was very, very difficult. I am a very strong, opinionated person. I don't like to be told. My job, let me do it. And if there's anything that I need to ask, I will come and ask. I think that was the biggest challenge that I felt, which I had to change. I have always been a business aligned person. I have been a customer service oriented person. So I brought that attitude into housekeeping, which wasn't there. And in many cases, you will see that housekeepers lack that. They feel it's my job to get the aesthetics right. They feel it's their job to lead the team and, not be visible. Because people don't want to see cleaners. They don't want to see people cleaning. It's a dirty job. But I changed, because as a person, I cannot hide in a shadow. So I am somebody, my personality comes to my work, and I made sure that my team was visible. We made very good uniforms for them, so that if they are moving around, people should not treat them as somebody they don't want to come close to. So I think that started my own journey of self-discovery. Things that I had taken for granted when I was in front office were very tough to get in housekeeping, and I fought for it. I fought for equality in housekeeping with other departments, and I think people understood beyond a point. They will have to give that respect. And I earned that respect. I worked very hard for my team to get that respect. And from there, the journey began, where I said, I think this is the department which needs me more. This was like my blue ocean strategy, because everybody wanted to join front office and housekeeping was not the preferred department. I said, okay, this is where maybe they need me more than I needing this work there.
Right.
So I think I did get some good benchmarks set, even for the hotel where I was working. And I think that's where the decision was taken, that the tough way is the right way.
Right. So let's get into numbers.
Okay.
And let's understand the scale of what you are handling and managing right now.
Okay.
And help us understand in terms of numbers, what kind of a responsibility that you have pan-India in terms of number of cities, in terms of number of employees that you're handling, in terms of number of cinemas, also number of screens, because I understand that cinemas is not where you stop. Your job gets into the number of screens as well. So just help us understand the scale.
Okay, so when I started, I joined PVR in the year 2014. And we were roughly 100 plus screens at that time. And that looked huge. It was immense, it was massive from where I had come. So last hotel I was with Lemon Tree, I had done some 12, 15 pre-openings of that hotel chain also. I was part of the pre-opening, and I used to travel a lot for opening hotels. And even 22, 23 at that time looked very big. I felt like for hotels it was one of the biggest portfolios that I was doing at that time. So no hotel chain had those many cities, what Lemon Tree was growing at the pace. And then again, some personal reasons that I had to come out of Lemon Tree, get into a real estate space which was did not require traveling. That was the only criteria, that I didn't want to travel. My son was still very young, he was growing up, and I wanted to be home for him. So I took that call, and PVR happened in 2014. And it was 100 plus already. And I was like, how will I even remember the name of my cinemas, the cities that they were present? And first month I was so overwhelmed. To answer your question, it is currently I think tipped at 363 and counting, because we keep on opening cinemas. It just happens. We have got so used to it across cities pan India. This is 116 cities within India, and there is of course Colombo in Sri Lanka, and we have 1700 plus screens. I cannot give you an accurate number because this number keeps on fluctuating every week. So 1712 or 1715, to give you little more perspective, it's not only just the screens, it's actually the number of seats, which is the most perishable item for us, that every seat needs to be filled. So the number of seats could be equivalent to a lakh, 1.8 lakhs, which gets sold 4.5 times a day.
Wow.
So it's an inventory of, let's say, roughly, if I was to just round off a number, to say 4.5 to 5 lakhs seats every day are on sale, and that's me and my team managing them.
Right. That's pretty unimaginable and huge in terms of the scale.
Yes.
I want to come down to the number of employees. Also, you mentioned that you worked very hard in giving a face to that team, and you mentioned uniforms. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is it true that the uniforms of your staff are designed by a fashion designer?
Oh yes. So that is something which I was also very excited about. Hotels do it all the time. So it wasn't surprising that we work with designers in hotels, but to see a retail brand or a entertainment brand like PVR investing so heavily in uniforms, so I think that comes straight from our MD, Mr. Rajay Bijli. But also that everybody today puts a lot of emphasis how their staff turns out. So we have worked with Ravi Bajaj, we have worked with Payal Jain, we have worked with Lekone Hemant, we have worked with Manish Malhotra also. They came on board through the Inox set of cinemas that we merged recently with, and Abraham and Thakur. So these are some very, very renowned, and they are very respected brands, and they also do uniforms, they also do haute couture, they have their own lines. So I think it is something very, very interesting to work with such varied set of designers, and who have brought in their own style, looking at our brand and their styling, and our people look like $1 million, I can tell you that at least.
Right, that's a great initiative. So PVR, as we all know, is a premium experience, right? It's something which defines luxury. It's something which makes the customer feel comfortable as well as premium. So help us understand that in this premium experience, what big a part do you play in that?
So when I say I represent my team, and I think I speak on behalf of all the housekeepers and all the faceless people that we don't normally see in hotels, at airports, at malls, and at PVR Inox cinemas as well. So whatever you see is shining, whatever you see is clean, whatever you call luxury, somebody has to maintain it. And the job that we do only gets noted when it doesn't get done. When it's getting done, nobody gets to know who's doing it, because we bring the glamour, we bring the charm. You get to see beautiful sofas, you'll see intricate embroidery on the cushions, you'll see beautiful chandeliers, great marble floors, shining, and you see airports, and everywhere you go, you will see somebody or the other, standing with a flat mop, or somebody is carrying a bit of a garbage bag and all, and nobody would remember that how much they must have worked for us to give you that kind of experience, that when you enter, you feel that you are smelling a good fresh air. A clean space smells clean. For me, that's very important. For me to know if a place is clean or not, I close my eyes and I take deep breaths, and to say, was it clean right or not? It's never about how you see visually, it's also about how you feel it. So cleanliness is all about experience for me, and I think we make our cinemas look extremely good, and that's always have been the effort from my team.
Which brings me to the next segment, which I was eagerly waiting to talk to you about, is women in leadership, right? So from where you sit, there is enough of a pipeline created by leaders today for women to enter the leadership positions, and what has been your journey like? Have there been roadblocks, or sometimes has that worked out to for you in terms of a strength?
You have I kudos to you for putting it so right. So yes, challenges are there, Ruchit, for everyone. I don't want to make it a gender thing. Yes, some people have experienced because women are seen for a certain role. The stereotype is always attached, and it is true for males also. So males find it very difficult when they want to get into a domain which is considered to be a women's domain. So I think the challenge is real for both the genders. I haven't experienced it so much myself, maybe because the kind of background that I come from. So I come from an army background. Equality, or there are few values which are intrinsic to kids who come from that kind of background. So you are never afraid of the unknown. You love to have the challenge. You always have the understanding of the different part of the country because you have traveled all through your life due to the postings, the infamous postings that the army kids have to go through, and you make friends easily. You appreciate all the culture. You love differences. So the collaboration and all, it doesn't get spoken about, but it gets part of our personality. So when I have entered any domain or any department or any industry, I never saw myself as a woman leader, but I think the others have seen me more like that person. And it has helped me to a great extent. When you say challenge, the challenge actually comes not from the job so much, but from the ecosystem, that it's easier for males to stay back. And it's not so easy for a woman to stay back late in the night, because then you have a safety issue that how will you reach home? So it's a safety issue. It has got nothing to do with my work. So number of hours are not the problem. Understanding of the work is not problem. Delivering on the ground is not a problem. It's the other aspects that a woman needs to be conscious about. Our commute needs to be safe. Place of work has to have those washrooms which are clean. And then yes, I mean, women do bring in a bit of a emotional aspect also to work. Sometimes people see it as a weakness. I think women express themselves more easily. They are not ashamed to express. So they can get angry easily, they can cry easily, or they can laugh easily. So I think, I don't see it as a weakness at all. And for us, it's important that women take more leadership roles, because these are the things that never crosses a male's mind. Because if you're working late, you're working late. For women, there could be a dual role waiting at the home also. She could be the caretaker, in terms of she's the one who has to take care of the kids. The kids are dependent on her. There could be a family which needs food, which the women could be required to cook. So not everybody at every level has the support system. So I think for women, that's where the challenge comes, not so much at the work, but what happens after the work. Once the job gets over, it's another duty that is waiting for them.
Right.
Not so much for the men.
Right.
That was earlier. I think nowadays men contribute as much.
Right.
So,
right. And I think you're bang on in terms of saying that women bring emotion, women are more expressive. So you spoke about safety in the ecosystem, right? So you've been a big flag bearer of POSH.
yes.
So in this ecosystem, can you help us and people who are unfamiliar with it, what exactly is POSH and why is it needed?
So Ruchit, POSH is a very, very important tool which has been given to women at workplace. The full form of POSH stands for Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace. This was an act which came in 2013, which the genesis of it was the Vishaka Guidelines of 1997. So women are at risk. I could be sitting here and say, it's an equal space for women to work. It's not. Being the POSH chairperson, I know for a fact that not every female or woman or girl who comes to work gets the same experience that I have been fortunate of. There could be predators who move amongst us, and they can exploit you if they see an opportunity. So we employ a lot of people from EWS, the Economical Weaker Section, you could say, and many other companies. So POSH gives us that tool. It's a mandatory act for all the companies and organizations to have, where you are supposed to have an internal committee which looks into complaints which are very unique to sexual harassment. So it's a tool over and above the HR, where you, because these are incidences where people are very scared to come out, they don't want to talk about it, they are not comfortable, then there is a stigma attached. And also that people will start judging you because of your, how you dress, how you speak, what time you come, what time you go. There would always be some kind of a victim shaming, so people don't like to talk about it. So POSH requires that the IC is fully trained, they are sensitized, there's a full way how do you address. And very importantly, it's a confidential inquiry where only the people who are part of the complaint and the IC gets to know. No management gets to know about it. Nobody gets to know about it. So it's a very good thing that has happened. Our government has given us that tool where women can come report without disclosing their name and identity. I mean, of course, the IC will get to know, but that she has lodged a complaint, nobody else will get to know because it is kept under wraps. Their reporting manager or their unit would not get to know. So this really helps. It gives women confidence that they can come, they can work freely, and if at all there is any unfortunate incident, there is somebody who would be there to redress it and take appropriate action.
Right. So in the past decade, have you seen that shift happen in terms of women coming ahead and speaking about harassment or disrespect? And could you give us an example how that really helped in the shift?
Yes. So Ruchit, what happens, like when I came into the workforce, we weren't very fully aware of it. A lot of people would not want to talk about it. One is that they think that it cannot happen to them, it would not happen to in their company, and people are educated, everybody knows, so they will speak up. It doesn't happen like that. The strongest of women or girls sometimes could be the victim and they don't want to speak. So this is a very, very it's something very challenging. It's very personal also.
Right.
So the ecosystem, when we say as an IC POSH chairperson, or even when I was serving as an IC member, what is really important when people want to speak about is that how do you communicate that it is important to speak up, and there is no stigma and there is no judgment. And very important that in today's time, our male workforce knows about it more than anybody else, because in their mind sometimes they don't even realize that the other person is taking an offense. So half of the time it is also about the cultural differences, how we speak and address each other. How are you judging me? How am I judging you? Your intent could be completely different than what I am reading. So it's very important that the males are told that what is a good behavior, and it is never about what was your intention. It is always about what the recipient is feeling or saying. So very simple, I'll give you an example. The guys could be cracking a joke without realizing that their female colleague is getting uncomfortable. She may not even say it, but she can still report about it. So anything which you feel is, if the other person, you don't know that person very well, and without knowing that this joke could be a joke amongst the guys but not so good, should not be cracked. One is that people use abusive words, it becomes part of their vocabulary. That should not be used in a workspace. So we are not in college, we are not partying. So when you are at a workplace, we insist and we ensure that our workforce has mutual respect for each other. And this goes for women also. They are allowed to do that to their male colleagues. So it's a very, very, it's a good tool. And in our organization, we have made it gender neutral, that we expect our females and males both to have mutual respect for each other.
Right, right.
We don't want to make it a tool which women have against males.
Correct.
It is for males also. If they feel uncomfortable that somebody's action, behavior, or even the digital mediums are objectionable or offensive, action can be taken against them.
Right, so which is exactly what I was getting to. Pardon me for being the devil's advocate here, but what about the safety of men? Has POSH ever been misused?
People do tend to, once they get to know about it, and sometimes the senior leadership could be at risk because it is their job to get the job done in the right way at the right time. And women do feel that if they feel that maybe I'm not getting what I needed from this job or career, they sometimes do feel that reporting into a POSH could give them a kind of a relief from their obligation or commitment or targets. we do come across very far and few, but it does happen. And hence the IC has to be neutral. The IC cannot come with a mindset to say that this cannot happen. So the training takes care of that we are trained to identify, and we use every tool to see that nobody should be unfairly treated, either the complainant or the respondent against whom the complaint has been raised.
Okay, so getting into behind the scenes at your work, one of the major events that happened recently in the entertainment industry is the merger of PVR and Inox. So I want to understand from you, how has the transition been like, be it operationally, emotionally, or even in processes? What was the change like? Did you have to unlearn some things? How did you go through the transition?
Wow, I could write a book about it. So you've asked me only 3-line question, but it's a very, very loaded question. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. So PVR and Inox were like two giants of multiplex chains, and the good part is both are Indian brands, and both are well respected. And today we are together, and we have become one of the bigger force that we could be in terms of our footfalls, or in terms of screens, we could be in the top 10 globally. That big is the size of the company in today's time. So no merger can be easy, because both the companies had 20 years of experience and culture behind them. Both companies had employees who had high tenure behind them. So it wasn't something that two companies come together and you say, okay, it's all good. It doesn't work like that. So once everything was cleared and it was a good to go, the merger is going through, there's a lot of I think anxiousness that people do realize that there would be some kind of a trimming that would happen. The whole intent, because there is a duplicacy of work, and the first thing that people look at is the organogram. Forget the processes, forget the business. First they see how many people are there and how do we bring in efficiency. The good part in this merger was that too many new roles were carved out. The whole intent was that we repurposed a lot of roles. We figured out ways. The idea was to retain as much talent that could be retained, was the intent, and that was very, very nice, I think, in this merger. People were given options, alternatives. The tough part that both the companies come from different work cultures, while the focus still remains that you want to entertain your people, you want to really delight them, and movie is an experience. Movie watching is an experience which is next to watching a cricket. I mean, movies and cricket are the two things that Indians love the most.
Right.
So I think 1 year of the merger was tough on both the sides. Sooner we realized it that it's not going to be easy, and we have to find ways to make peace with it. I think it became easier. Winning people's trust on both sides. I was leading one team, there was another team which came into being, and to treat them equal. So winning the trust and to listen to everyone without rejecting any idea, without rejecting any thought, and to give it a full kind of way to say, okay, what is the merit of them doing this and we doing that? What is the best for the joint entity? So if you move with that kind of thought process, I feel it makes it easier, because then you can't let your emotion run the show. We have to be professionals end of the day, and that has helped me to, at least for my department, I can say that we are working very well. There are a lot of Inox members, there are a lot of PVR members. It's now a PVR Inox team, and together we are trying to deliver the best that we can. So merger was not easy, Ruchit.
Right.
Lot of work, lots of work, because overnight we became double.
Right.
And I think the processes also were sometimes very contradictory to each other. So today we have synergized and we have found the most efficient way to move forward, and I think we are very good now. Very, very good.
Right, that's great to know. So on the backdrop of that merger and the recent talk in the town about OTT subscriptions, how do you see that playing out? Because you mentioned that PVR or movie going is an experience, right, which can never be replaced by any OTT platform. And you particularly being I think one of the major leaders responsible for that experience to be premium. How do you see that on the backdrop of that merger, along with the OTT conversation which is happening in the industry, plus the movie industry not doing as well as it used to? What are your thoughts?
So OTT is here to stay, and so are the cinemas. So I'll take the analogy of the cricket and the IPL that we are watching now on TV. You will never see that the stadiums are empty when in India is playing, or IPL matches are never unsold. They are
Right.
sold out.
Right.
Okay, because Indians love cricket. So even the Australians or the New Zealanders, when they come to India, they really like all those fans cheering for them or against them, whichever may be the case. So stadiums have only so much of capacity, and then the rest of us watch it on TV, or we cannot travel to watch it. Similarly, cinemas are here to stay. We've had those times when VCRs came, and all those things have happened to cinema, and we have survived so far. You are right that OTT does tend to sometimes eat into your revenue, but if the content is good, people love to come out. That OTT phase was also forced upon because of the unfortunate COVID incident the whole world had to go through. But we are getting our patrons back. The content and the pipeline, it's so exciting that you want to bring your friends, you want to bring your family, you want to step out. It's a community experience which can never be replaced. So OTT can give you a good plethora of content, because you cannot go to cinema every day. It's also an expense and time, and OTT can fill in those things, but I don't think so. I think they can totally coexist, and we are seeing the numbers. Our patrons are returning back to cinemas, and merger has helped us actually to consolidate, because now we are trying to give, there is no competition, at least two big brands are not competing against each other.
Right.
So we are trying to bring in a product service mix which is very entertaining for the patrons who take out their precious 3-4 hours to watch movie inside a cinema. So there's an enhancement in technology, there's enhancement in screens, your chair comfort, the food variety. We want to make it a 360-degree experience, not just the movie which we have no control on. The content we don't create.
Right.
But how do you consume the content? What should be your experience when you start booking with us, to the point that you leave the theater? Is everything has been thought about. We constantly work on those interfaces where our patron is interacting with us digitally or in person, and there's always a need for improvement. It is a continuous process. So we are trying to do it every day, every second, every minute, how to improve on it as
Right.
we speak also. Yes.
Right. Also, I wanted to understand, getting into the core of your job, what is the most stressful or chaotic situation that you've gotten into, and maybe you or your team have saved the day? Maybe a tech fail or a VIP entry. Can you tell us a story where everything looked haywire, but then your team saved the day?
So when I say my team, then I would like to say that the entire PVR Inox team. So I would not restrict myself to the department then. You will be surprised to know how many incidents we have to deal with every day.
Right.
So we are geographically we have been at so many cities. So while we are sitting here in and it's dry and hot outside in Gurgaon, it's flooding in Karnataka, Bengaluru city. So that happens to us. I'm sitting in Gurgaon, but I'm dealing with a situation where there is water on the roads. Sometimes our staff cannot reach, or sometimes there could be some kind of a issue within the premises of the mall, or it could happen to us within the cinema. So every day there is something or the other happening. Very recently we've had this border situation where some of the states had a shutdown. The situations are so unpredictable sometimes, and they happen in the cities which you sometimes say, okay, now this was one place which we had seen peace and quiet, and even here you get to deal with something. VIP moment is something that we deal with. The team is very highly trained. So when we say celebrities, people, we have premieres all the time. So all these Hollywood, Bollywood people come to us and they do their shows, they do their interviews. So the team, they are very used to it. They make sure that they are taken care of, the safety is there, nobody is kind of harassing them or anything. So that part is taken care of. When we talk about situations, we've handled even a COVID. You could say that our cinemas got so empty and people were so scared to come. Over there, you could say that we came together as a team and we made sure that the customer journey had to be safe. Whatever they had to use or touch in our premises was made sure was clean and infection free. So we went clinical. We got so involved into it to make sure that people come back. That was one of the biggest challenge, you could say, to bring the confidence and the patrons to come back and sit inside an Audi to consume post COVID. So I think we have evolved with time. We anticipate. We are always alert to say, okay, there could be a climatic issue, there could be some border dispute issue, there could be some there are also people do get offended about some content, so they take offense to something which is being shown inside the movie, and we could be totally bearing the brunt of it.
Right.
So, and there could be some other technical snags. Sometimes our projectors can go down. There could be a generator issue. This is so much of technology. There is failure. So I think all the teams we all come together at the cinema, and we make sure that our patrons are taken care of, if required, compensated, and given an alternate show if something has gone bad. So it's a very well-oiled machine. Not everything can be anticipated, but whatever best can be done gets done at the cinema.
Right. So that's a great combination of a proactive plus reactive approach.
Yes.
So I want to know what is your dirtiest metric. So for example, it could be how much of dust is allowed at a popcorn counter. So want to understand the details of the work that you do. What are your metrics that you look at?
So there could be no degree of dirt which can be ever allowed.
Right.
Whether can I clean it or not, my team can reach every nook and corner or not is a different matter, but it is never allowed. We can never ever have a place which is not clean. So the team, how do we ensure it? So we have two kind of audits. One is an internal audit and one is an external audit. Me and my department, we put a lot of efforts. So there are more than 150 checkpoints in my internal audit every day that my team has to ensure that gets done. It's very comprehensive. It takes care of everything that I can think of and the team can deliver. So what happens to make sure that we deliver on all those 150 plus points, that is part of my internal audit or checklist, we do tend to not score very high. So I am not exactly the champion in that. My team do tend to miss sometimes because we work in 3 different shifts, and it's also a moment of truth for us that what the auditor found at that day. These are very, very tough checklists. We make it life and death issue for my department. And because I am so tough, my external audits are extremely good. So the patron never gets to know the kind of effort that has gone or the planning that has gone in creating or getting that experience, because we work very, very hard. So because of my background, maybe we can say, because we practice so hard, we sweat so much in peace that we save blood in war. So we work very hard internally when nobody is watching, and then we are able to deliver an experience that our patrons, they take it for granted, that it should be clean. That's the intent and that's the expectation. The patron should never see anything dirty as much as we can allow. Yes.
That's very well put, actually. So keeping a strict check and making the internal audit extremely strict so that the external audit is smooth sailing.
Taken care of itself.
That's a very nice approach. Everyone talks about this term or this phrase, which is 5-star hygiene, right? We hear it a lot. What is it at your level? More than 100 cities that you mentioned, maintaining that kind of 5-star hygiene, what is it like?
So when we say 5-star, it's the grading, right?
Right.
Not the hotel 5-star.
No.
Okay, the 5-star. So see, 5 out of 5 is supposedly the best.
Right.
And that's how we encourage our patrons, our customers, our internal customers also. My first responsibility is towards our own employees. that they feel that they are coming to a very, very clean and safe and hygienic place to work. They must feel very happy coming to work at the cinema. So that's the first criteria that I look at, and that's how I train my team. This is my first ask is that if you are taking care of your back of the house, the front of the house can't go back. The heart of the house, the back of the house, if it is in order, if that is part of your being, then your front of the house will be taken care of. So that's the approach, that you start clean your own house, and then you make sure that what people or patron gets to see are also clean. And 5-star, when we say, so it's a degree of your own experience. Like I said, to some people a certain degree could be acceptable, but we want to put it at the highest level. So not only it should be visually clean, it has to be hygienically clean, and post-COVID everybody knows that it has to be clinically clean.
Right.
So the degree for is not what you see. Like I earlier told you, that it's all about when you breathe. The air has to smell good, it has to smell fresh. You could make it greater by putting some fragrance, which is a good to have but not a must have. But for me it's very important what you don't get to see also is clean. So that's the level of cleanliness that we ensure and we work every day on. That it's a lot of stuff that you don't get to see gets cleaned.
Right.
So that's our trade secret.
So visually, hygienically and clinically, that's 3 layers of hygiene.
Yes.
That must be tough, and that really shows when we go to any of the PVR cinemas. So yeah, kudos to your work there. So at the corner office, we often like to talk about the entire vendor ecosystem. I'm sure you'd be dealing with or associated with hundreds or thousands of vendor partners, right? So take us through how does that aspect of your work look like, first of all, and secondly, having to deal with so many vendors on a pan-India basis and even internationally, how important is vendor digitization? Does it really play a big part, and has it helped you deal with these vendor partners better?
Okay, so vendors and our partners, I call them my partners only. So in fact, I was telling somebody a few days back to say that people, when they talk about the business, so they say there are 4 P's. So they say people, they say product, and then there is profit and processes. And I have added 2 more P's to it. So I say, in my parlance, we also say patrons, because for us patron is the king, and then the partners. And the partners come in all forms. The partners are our vendors, our suppliers, our people who are on our staff, like especially my team, which is actually through our partners only. I work with third-party contractual staff, which comprises 90% of my workforce. So you rightly pointed out, I work with many because it's a pan-India company. We are present in almost maximum cities and states of this country. So digitization is the only way that I see that we stay in touch. Otherwise, people do tend to get lost in the day-to-day work. How do we know how the partner is actually contributing? There has to be some set parameters. And I think a lot of time people say that, what is the feedback that you want to give? What is your feedback? What is your feedback? Every time it's always the client feedback. People are asking that, the renewal of contracts will be based on the feedback of the client and other things. For me, when I say the digital, there's an aspect which I want, is that I want to know how the partner has felt working with me and my team. The reverse feedback is as important as my feedback with the partner.
Right.
I want to know how do they feel working with PVR INOX, how do they feel working with my team, how do they find our tact of responding to their query. What about them? I mean, everybody is asking about me, but that's something which is a given. But are we also thinking from their perspective? This is something that I want to always constantly instill in my team, to say, listen, we have a contract. We are always chasing on the deliverables and on the other stuff that they are required to do. How many times have we taken care of that? Are we also doing our share of work for their this thing? So when you have a digital relationship, it's very easy to trace and track. Extremely important. Also gives them a place and a platform to express themselves or the queries or challenges. It is not person specific. Nobody can tell you to reach a certain person, because digital does not know designation or people.
Yeah.
Information is easily available. You can make the most out of it. Nobody can suppress good work. If you don't have digital, if you don't have technology, somebody sitting in a one place would not know how to do, and people could totally, kind of misguide you.
Right.
So if anything is digital, you will not get misguided. Nobody can put wool in your eyes. You know what's going on. So data helps. I think when you have digital, data helps. Easy to find the performances. So ultimately we are all working. We are getting judged by our patrons, and we are also getting judged by our management, our board, our investors, everybody. Similarly, when we are judging our partners or they are judging us, the digital helps. Both the sides get their voice. I think that helps.
Right.
For me, it's a great thing.
Right. So I'm a founder myself, and we deal with clients, right? Not a single client has ever mentioned or even said to me that how is my TAT or how are my deliverables. So I think that is again something that is very refreshing, and I really respect this approach of yours.
My team knows it from day one, that if you take care of, people say if you take care of your employees or staff, they take care of your business. Similarly, I always tell my team, if you take care of your vendors and suppliers, then you save so much of time doing the follow-ups. Your job gets done because they prioritize over you. Because if you make them your first priority, then I think a lot of time gets saved. Then we can serve our customers for which we have been hired, instead of working and chasing people. So
Right.
my team knows. You may be hearing it for the first time. I think they
Right.
just know it with me, that there's no other way to work than to take care of our partners all the time, our staff, our partners, and then it's easier to focus on what we are required to do.
Right. That's brilliant. Now let's talk green practices. So what does ESG mean in your line of work, and especially how does that translate into the daily operations?
So again, ESG, it's a very, we just use 3 syllables, and then you realize that it's a very big topic in itself. ESG itself can take one full day if we were to talk about. So as an organization, we are very, very committed to ESG. I can talk about, as a head of the department, what my department has done towards it. So this is something which is, again, it's continuous, it's ongoing, and now government has become very serious about it. So it's getting mandatory for everyone, not just us. So for environment perspective, there are few initiatives that we have taken in my department. The first one, again, I'll bring you back to the uniforms. A full set of uniforms that we are providing to our team has been done by recycled plastic waste. So I think almost 50 cinemas are currently, there are staff which are 2000 plus number of staff who are already wearing this uniform, which has been created by recycled plastic bottle waste. So we have created suits, we have created trousers, we have created shirts, skirts, and we have also tied up with another brand which is creating shoes from recycled waste. So the uniforms that we are giving, we are working towards moving towards 100% on that. We use a lot of paper in our washrooms in terms of tissues, in terms of toilet rolls. So we have started moving away from tree-based paper products. We are moving towards the bamboo-based paper products. So bamboo does not qualify as tree. It is something that is termed as and classified as grass. The more you cut it, the better it grows. So we have started using bamboo-based paper products.
Not a lot of this I knew, and I'm sure a lot of people would not know this, but massive respect for PVR knowing the amount of things that they are doing because of the scale that they operate at. You mentioned 50 cinemas, the staff already wearing uniforms. recycled from plastic, which is something which is a very good initiative, and that I'm sure the all the examples that you mentioned would translate into a lot of good for the environment. And like like everyone says, like it should start at the top, and I think PVR is the best example of a brand or someone in this ecosystem who's trying to do that. So massive respect. Didn't have any idea as to generally, these conversations we have, but it's not really seen or translated on ground. But the amount of work that you are putting into this is actually on ground change. So that's not a lot of people or organizations or brands or leaders are doing that.
So there's one more word, or I could add maybe. So ESG, or accessibility. So our cinemas actually work very, very hard on making them accessible to people with special abilities. We have invested a lot in because cinema by design have to be in a steps. There are steps because of the height.
Correct.
So we've got step climbers, people who are on wheelchairs can come to our cinemas end to end, like from the basement or from the entrance. Our cinemas have also very, very religiously, we're trying to make it accessible to people. And we are working very hard that our content comes with subtitles. So people who cannot hear can at least enjoy the movies.
Right.
We do special shows for EWS and through people. So there's a lot of effort that goes into those also, where inclusiveness and accessibility is also part of our ESG efforts, you
Right.
could say that.
Right.
So I think this company, I think kudos to our top management and how we all work towards it. There's always some kind of a solution finding, that how can more people come and enjoy this.
Right.
That is the effort always.
Right. So you mentioned AI chatbots. So I want to understand, in your experience, does customer feedback loop actually reach to the top, or does it get lost in the hierarchy?
No. So our company, and I don't know, this could be maybe my destiny or fortune, or I don't know. Everywhere, the top management has always been very keen to know the voice of customer. And this is not something that they would like to know. They actively ask for it. So it's not just that we are waiting for a customer to give feedback. We actually go out of our way to ask. If you're not telling us, then we'll start some kind of a survey to say, okay, why are you not talking? So post-COVID, pre-COVID, we invest in listening to our customers, what do they want to. So there's a mechanism where our customers, when they book tickets, so once the experience is over, we actively ask for feedback.
Yes.
And all the feedback gets consolidated, whichever medium it is coming. In today's time, there's so many mediums people use to give feedbacks on. That gets collated. We have one full department that is dedicated doing only this. So one is response to the feedback, good, bad, or passive. One is tracing and tracking. So the mystery audit is also more like that. And then there is a very dedicated Q&A, that if there's something which is very new or creative, we want to embrace it. If our customers want it, we want to do it. So there have been times when somebody has given a feedback on Insta, and somebody said, okay, your Pepsi is expensive, let's say, I'm just saying. So then we came and we did a whole campaign of bottomless. How much can you have? Similarly, the popcorns, bottomless. So we do all these campaigns. We listen to our customers, what they are saying. And there are campaigns to address. Then there are, those Tuesdays where the tickets are sold at 99, any format. So that everybody, whatever the customers are saying, we're actively listening. And our management, top management, is extremely involved in finding solutions. So all the technology, all the accessibility, all the food quality, all the menu choices, all the seat comfort, everything is getting evolved through what our customers and patrons are telling us.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So that brings us to the interesting part of the episode, which is we like to do a rapid fire.
Okay.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to give you some questions which you have to answer quickly.
Okay.
So favorite city to work in and why?
Gurgaon.
Why?
I think this city is very young, and it gets the best talent. People want to come here, and work, and it's easy to work with young people. I just love to work with young people. Yes.
Right. Our favorite travel destination?
I think the mountains. I like to go to my hometown twice a year.
Right.
It's Himachal.
One life decision that you're most proud of?
I think when I took a break from a job which was really happening. So when I quit Lemon Tree, I was really doing well in my career, and there was a lot of money that I let go in terms of ESOPs. But I think that gave me time and space to bond with my son, and the dividends are still paying. So I think it was very okay to take 2 steps back at that time.
Your favorite seat in the cinema?
Okay, it is the center seat. So there's a very nice golden triangle that you can make, and it is not exactly the last seats, it's somewhere in between.
Is it?
Yes, center, I think 3, 4, 6 from behind, and in the center you get the best view.
Right. Your go-to mantra before a tough day?
Wear your best attitude, you can do it.
One PVR cinema that gives you true pride?
There's so many, that's not fair.
Just one, if you could be like the most proud of one cinema.
So I could say Priya, because that's where the story began, and when I first saw it and now what it stands for, I think I would choose PVR Priya.
Okay. One celebrity guest who made your team panic?
There's so many. So we are not there all the time. But I think panic is not the word. We get very excited. So we get excited when Shah Rukh Khan came,
Right.
Amitabh Bachchan came. I think these are the 2 names, the biggest in the industry. Extremely excited.
What disappears the most? Mops, popcorn, or walkie-talkies?
The dusters.
Dusters.
The dusters.
Okay. What is the best kept secret of PVR? Let's bring it out.
PVR is here to stay. People can write as many obituaries as they may want to. We are here to stay, and we are here for the long run, the longest run. And like they say that if cinema is the king, then content is the king, or the movie is the king, then cinema is the kingdom. Without us, the movies don't exist.
Right. Again, very well put. And I think that'll shut up a lot of people talking ill about cinemas going down.
They can, dream about it.
Okay. I have to ask this, and excited to ask this also. Your favorite movie?
My favorite movie?
Yeah.
Oh yes. I have very good movies. The one which I like to go back is Jab We Met.
Jab We Met.
Yes.
Nice one. Okay. Let's say fictionally, if you had to switch departments tomorrow, which department would you be most interested in?
Operations.
Operations. Okay. One trend in hospitality you wish should just die?
The guest is always right.
Okay, that's a nice one. Most outrageous vendor excuse that you've heard?
You really want to know that?
Yeah.
Somebody has died in my family.
Wow, yeah. I think I've heard that before.
Because then you can't argue with that.
Yes.
You can't argue
Which
with
is why
that.
they say it. Okay. Structured routines or spontaneous plans?
Spontaneous plans.
Okay. Are you more logical or emotional in decision making?
I'm very logical.
Okay. So if I ask in terms of vendor partners, do you look at cost or do you look at relationships?
Over here, I think, so logically speaking, if you take care of the relationship, the cost takes care of itself.
You're great with words.
No, but that's the right way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. What motivates you more? External rewards, personal growth, or social impact?
Social impact.
Okay.
Impact.
Right. If you could ban one corporate phrase forever, what would it be?
When you say hypothetically.
Okay. Right. And one last question. Which women leader would you like to see next on the corner office?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
I
If
would
you
love
could
to.
nominate someone.
Yes, Tapasya. Because knowing you and Tapasya and Krishan, I think what you guys have done and put together is so inspirational. And before this, I was talking that I feel so lacking And you guys make me so conscious to say that what you have achieved in the age that you are in, we were clueless. We were very clueless about it. And to know that how your mind works, how this generation thinks. And I know we are very, very old people. And you guys are doing so much in such little time and experience. I think Tapasya would be a great candidate. I would like to know how her mind works. How can she think so much and still remaining that very, very happy-go-lucky person. She's not a bitter person. She's not somebody who's very rough and tough. She does her work with so much of softness and agility. I think that's something which is very, very inspirational. I see a bright future for all of you.
Thank you so
She
much.
being the women face of it.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for giving us your time and coming here. I think I've really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
If you could look into that camera and tell our viewers what was your experience like and why should they watch The Corner Office?
Okay, so I am not an interesting person, neither am I a celebrity. But the reason that you should listen to this conversation, I would say, is that you would know that someone like me who had so much of flaws, uncertainty, not very clear goals, working with instinct, could make it 32 years working and a respectable position where I do my decisions influence people. I think it's worth knowing somebody like me, and if you can carry something in your personal professional journey, that would make a lot of difference to me as a person.
Once again, very well put. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you liked our content, please like, share and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on LinkedIn. Thank you.